Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ananda Healing Hypnosis. My name is Amanda, and I will be your guide today through the journey of a former client's past life regression. With full permission, she was more than happy to allow me to share her journey with you all. So, this is part two of a two-session series. While they are two completely different stories and past lives, they actually do still, interconnect, which is the whole purpose of doing two sessions. Basically, it's what brings together the healing process and really allows everything to just come full circle. So if you haven't already watched part one, I'll go ahead and put it in the suggestion box, which you will find in the corner, and you'll see that pop up. But then I'll also go ahead and just put it in the pinned comments. So, as a reminder, this client came in with a presenting issue of feeling overly independent, which, created an impact on her relationships and made it hard for her to let others in. She often felt unheard when she did ask for assistance, which created the thought that in order to protect herself and her energy from feeling as though others were just brushing her requests off, she had to be overly persistent and demanding in order to be heard, validated and actually receive the assistance that she desired. So, through her past life stories, we can see how this particular thought created, a certain behavior and habit that has not only had an impact on her past lives, but also how she lives in her current life. And of course, yes, there are things from this life that has had an impact on that as well, but it's kind of that whole karmic debt aspect of all of this. It's something that she carried forward from past lives. So the first past life is where the presenting issue is more of a thing. It's more showing up specifically as that presenting issue. But now what you'll notice in this second session is that it sort of is reversed. It's showing her like the other aspect, the healed aspect, the version that she is wishing to bring into her life right now. So as her story unfolds, we can understand what it is that she truly desires and how she can overcome the habit, the current thought of what her presenting issue is and create a new one that is much more aligned to how she currently wishes to live. So, what I invite you to do now as we get into the story is to just sit back, relax, and enjoy this experience. So, as I regressed my client back into a past life, she immediately spoke to feeling the warmth of a fire. As the scene came more into focus, she was able to sense and see a campfire. Looking around more, she noticed that she was outside in the wide open plains of the Midwest. She came to an immediate understanding that she was living as a part of a Native American village, and although the name of the tribe didn't come to her, she knew that she worked with the sacred buffalo. The buffalo is what provided them with their food, shelter material, clothing, and so much more. Glancing down, she noticed that she was wearing a long brown dress with beads, and her hair was in braids. She felt that she was a young woman in her late teens to early 20s living sometime in the 1800s. Once she was able to gather who she was and where she was able to connect into a scene of that life where she and others had been called to a council meeting. She was a part of this council, which had significant meaning for her. This allowed her to understand and remember what it is to be a part of a council and community where both male and female opinions are equally weighed. During the scene, they were all weighing in on whether or not to move their camp. Winter was coming, so a decision would need to be made as to whether they should all stay in the open plains or move back into the forest for protection and added warmth, especially, considering those who are more vulnerable, like women and children and elders. The forest is what would protect them from the winds that staying on the plains just, couldn't offer. From this meeting, there is a great level of respect provided to the women as their voices are very prominent and listened to. This in turn creates compromise and cooperation where the men decide that they will put their energy into hunting to get more meat before the winter comes, and the women are okay with packing up the camp to move from the wide open plains to be into the protection of the forest. What we're noticing here is that each person, each gender, I suppose you could say, they play their part and their role in creating balance, harmony, and respect, and a deep connection with and for all. So, coming into the next scene, she sees herself sitting around the fire in the woods in the wintertime. The women are cooking and enjoying each other's company, and there's a sharing of resources with all, so everyone is fed and warm. She points out that what she's able to take from this is that when you're all heard, you can move forward together. So while she's sitting there content, she looks around and notices a couple of familiar energies that connect to those in her current life. The first person that she notices is her grandmother, who's presented as a wise elder. She first notices the same twinkle in her eye, a twinkle that represents a sort of mischievousness, yet still holds a sense of wisdom. And what stands out in this moment is that her grandmother tends to only speak when she has something important to say, because her words hold a high level of impact and importance. And she doesn't really need to say much. She just needs to say the important things. She just needs to say what she knows holds that high level of wisdom. She knows that there aren't a whole lot of words that necessarily need to be said. It's just the intention put into the wording. And as you'll notice from this, the reason that she's pointing this out is because it is very significant, which she'll bring up later, but it is very significant to what she needs to come to an understanding with. So as she looks around more, she happens to notice a friend that is a friend in this life and is also a friend in that past life. Her friend in that life is a teacher of wisdom, and she feels that she represents an enduring wisdom of friendship and compassion that spans across time. So as she kind of exits that scene, we go into the lessons of the scene itself. From this particular scene, she spoke to how in her current life, even though her grandmother lived in a repressive male culture, she was still able to slip in her wisdom without getting scolded. What she took from this is that even though more recent times and cultures have tried to repress female wisdom, behind closed doors, a silver thread has continued that has allowed the strength to remain in the feminine aspects. While women's voices may be and have been silenced at times, there's still strength in the femininity. And of course, this is speaking more so to the gentle ways and wisdom that comes through with a feminine type aspect, and not necessarily to, females in general. And just as we were starting to kind of wrap up the lessons, suddenly her grandmother's voice came through stating that feminine energy is important to men, but they were afraid of it because they were always told not to express it as it would show a weakness and a vulnerability. So what ended up happening is not only did the men of the client's grandfather's time silence their own kind of feminine aspects in their voices and the way in which they lived and would be, they also silenced the voices of the women in their life. because they were silencing all the femininity. Now, from this, she was able to come away with the knowledge that feeling heard and being equal in partnerships is important in this and all lives, as female and male opinions do matter, just like in the counseling meeting. Now, moving into the final scene, her end of life scene, she felt very much at peace. It was tradition to say goodbye to family when they felt like it was their time to go. So she would just go off into the forest to curl up and pass into the afterlife. But it was a peaceful process and felt very similar to just taking a nap, where she was able to just fully let go. She felt comfort in knowing that her body would be buried and honored. She felt a sense of love and gratitude for her community because life is truly valued there. In her culture of that time, death wasn't something to be feared because it was just another process. It was just a transition. The lesson that she was able to come away with from this scene specifically, it really ties into the last scene and overall message of the session, is that there's immense wisdom held in community and choosing to value each other's input regardless of, gender. So both the feminine and the masculine needs to be valued and heard. And learning this allowed her to realize that in order for her voice to be heard now, she needs to step up and allow it to be heard. Now, there is definitely more to, speak to with that, but as we continue to go on through this, she'll definitely point more things out. So going from the end of life scene into the afterlife, she was able to connect with her spirit guides and again take away certain lessons. And what came through was that she just needs to speak her truth and not be afraid to speak her truth. She can just let go of the worry as to what will happen. So in this life, she can, have her opinions and allow her truth to be told. But what is important for her to take notice of is how she is going about stating her opinions and her truth. Her spirit guides were very specific in telling her, use softness and compassion, because this is what will allow her message to be received better. If she kind of lets go of some of that harsh sort of masculine energy to the words that she is using, and she puts more of that soft feminine approach in there, the message that she needs to say can still be said, but it'll be heard in a different way. So the end message basically with all of this is that it's okay to remember that she can speak her truth, but to just soften the edges. Walk from that space of truth, but do so with compassion. As she pulls away the lessons that she was able to take from her past lives and her current life, we went ahead and we broke the bonds of time. And what this means is we are breaking that karmic debt, making it so she doesn't have to continue to repeat that cycle. She can now come to full realization of what she needed to take away from these sessions, which was finding balance in both her feminine and masculine aspects, while also being okay with speaking her truth, feeling what she feels needs to be said, asking for the help, but doing so with strength and softness. So she can bring together both the masculine and the feminine aspects of her being, walking in her truth, knowing that she can be both strong and soft. And this is what will allow her to walk on her path of freedom. Freedom in having her independence, freedom in knowing that she can be heard and her words are valid. So it was a very powerful realization and session for her to have. Everything was able to come full circle, as we mentioned, with kind of summarizing everything just now. And it will be interesting to see how things kind of come together for her. So that does summarize the session and everything that we spoke to through it all. And I hope that you did enjoy this story. If you did, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, to show that you liked it, and subscribe because there definitely will be more. There would definitely be more past life regression stories that I share. This is something that I actually plan on doing a couple times a month. So if this is something that you definitely enjoy, I would love for you to subscribe and hit that notification bell. All right, thanks for listening.